Some signals aren't meant to be found. On the dead planet of Virion, where silence has ruled for decades, a forgotten beacon begins to blink. 3 long, 2 short, 1 sharp pulse, like a heartbeat buried under ice. No Odin, no records, no reason. But when comms technician Cole Mercer answers the call, he doesn't just find a mystery. He finds a woman once thought dead, paralyzed beneath the snow, and hiding a secret that could destroy everything in orbit. What begins as a rescue quickly spirals into a countdown, a betrayal buried deep in the planet's core, and a decision that will change both their lives forever. But the real question is, why was she left behind? Before we start, aliens hide the answer in plain sight. Can you outsmart them? Crack the pinned comment question to prove humanity's brain power reigns supreme. Watch every second, but let the cosmos laugh at us. I'll be waiting your answer. Oh yes, please, please and please. Hit that car button in the top right corner to subscribe now. And be sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss a single one of our epic daily stories the moment they drop. Let's dive in the story. The wind screamed across the frozen plains of Virion, sharp as razors and cold enough to bite through Cole Mercer's thermal suit. Each step he took crunched beneath his boots, the snow thick and angry beneath a dark, starless sky. This planet had been dead for years. No colonies, no signals, just silence. That's why the pulse shouldn't have existed. 3 long, 2 short. Pause. Repeat. A distress pattern. But no one should have been alive to send it. Cole's breath fogged up the inside of his helmet as he paused near the blinking beacon, a dim light buried in a snowdrift. His gloved fingers brushed the icy crust away, and what he saw made him flinch. A hand, pale, silver, and dusted with frost. His gut tightened as he began digging frantically, throwing snow aside. The light revealed more. Shoulders, tangled black hair, streaked with ice, and a face too still. Then eyes, stormy blue, piercing, alive. Don't touch me, the woman rasped, her voice brittle as cracked glass. Cole froze. You're alive? No, she muttered, coughing. You're hallucinating. He blinked, stunned by her sarcasm. Well, if I'm hallucinating, you're a real mouthy figment. Her lips twitched, almost a smirk, before her body tensed. Cole watched her carefully. She didn't try to move. Couldn't. You're hurt, he said. I'm paralyzed, she replied flatly. Don't make a big speech about it. Cole knelt beside her, heart pounding. She was half buried in ice and wearing a cloak that looked like it belonged in a royal hall, not a graveyard planet. How long have you been here? She didn't answer. He reached for her shoulder. Look, I need to get you out of here before your organs decide to freeze. I said, don't touch, she hissed, but her voice cracked mid-protest. Cole ignored her. He gently slid an arm under her back, the other beneath her knees. She was light, unnaturally so. He felt the tension in her muscles, like she was still fighting even when there was nothing left to fight. What's your name? He asked. She looked away, jaw clenched. Rayla. Rayla what? None of your business. Well, Rayla, none of my business. I'm Cole Mercer. And you're damn lucky I was the one who found you. She huffed. Debatable. He started toward his rover, trudging through knee-deep snow, holding her close. I don't need saving, she said, trying to sound defiant. Too late, Cole shot back. You're already in my arms. Might as well enjoy the ride. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She muttered, breath hot against his neck. A little. You're not the worst company I've had in a blizzard. The storm thickened around them. Lightning flickered in the distance, and the temperature dropped further. Rayla's voice softened as the wind howled louder. You shouldn't have come. Cole glanced down at her, puzzled. What? Her eyes met his, and for a second, something deeper flickered there. Pain, fear, something old. Because now you're part of it. He didn't ask what she meant. Not yet. The hab unit door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the screaming winds of Virion's storm. Inside, it was barely warmer, but compared to the icy wasteland outside, it felt like paradise. The generator hummed, flickering dim yellow lights overhead. Cole kicked snow off his boots and glanced at the motionless figure in his arms. Rayla was pale, her lips tinged blue, but her eyes stayed sharp, even in exhaustion. He lowered her gently onto the padded cot, then moved to the nearby heater and cranked it up. "Don't get comfortable," she muttered. "You're welcome," Cole replied, shaking snow from his hair. "Next time I'll leave you to ice sculpt yourself." Rayla shifted slightly under the thermal blanket, her jaw tightening. "I didn't ask you to drag me out of there." "No," he said, walking back to her. "You just blinked at me like a half-dead frost ghost and muttered some cryptic threat. Very inviting." She didn't respond. Instead, her gaze wandered around the cramped unit. Stacked comm gear, metal walls covered in wiring, a worn-out map of Virion taped crookedly to the far panel. "This your castle?" she asked. "I've lived in worse," Cole said, sitting at the edge of the cot to check her vitals. "Power's sketchy, but there's heat, food, and a shower if you want to smell less like frozen rust." "Charming," she muttered, wincing as he adjusted the blanket around her. "You're lucky your body went hypothermic slow. You should be a popsicle. I've survived worse." "Yeah." He raised an eyebrow. "Mind telling me what worse looks like?" Her lips pressed into a line. Cole leaned back and folded his arms. "You know, usually when I find someone half dead in the snow, they're a little more grateful." "Then you've been rescuing the wrong people," she shot back. He laughed. Noted. For a while, silence settled between them, broken only by the occasional groan of wind against the walls. Rayla stared at the ceiling, eyes distant. Cole finally broke the quiet. "That cloak of yours, not standard issue. Military." She looked at him sideways. "You really don't know who I am?" "Nope. Should I?" She hesitated. Something flickered across her face. Surprise? Regret? "No," she said. "Better if you don't." Cole stood and walked to the corner where a long bench was cluttered with tools and spare parts. He started fiddling with a broken stimpack, pretending not to watch her. "I used to be someone," Rayla murmured. "Don't we all?" She turned her head toward him. "I led an uprising here. Years ago. Against the Union." Cole stopped. "Wait, Rayla Vec? That Rayla? You said it was better if you didn't know." He shook his head slowly, letting the realization sink in. "You're supposed to be dead. Apparently I'm very bad at staying that way." Cole met her eyes, serious now. "So what the hell were you doing buried under snow on a dead planet?" Rayla looked away. "I was left behind." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "By my own people." Cole didn't speak. He didn't need to. The storm outside roared louder, but inside, the silence said everything. Cole hadn't slept in 2 days. He sat hunched at his cluttered workbench, dark circles beneath his eyes, sleeves rolled up, fingers smeared with grease. Sparks flicked off a crude welding tool as he adjusted the alignment on an exo-frame's spinal rig, an old mining harness he'd been refitting for weeks, but now, for her. Behind him, Rayla lay on the cot, watching in silence. The heater buzzed faintly. The storm still whispered outside, but its fury had dimmed. "You should rest," she said, her voice unusually soft. Cole didn't turn. "You're hilarious." "I'm serious." "So, am I." He tapped a worn circuit board into place. "This thing isn't going to build itself." Rayla shifted, gritting her teeth. Her legs still refused to respond, but she'd been testing her arms, moving them more each day. Stubborn, determined, dangerous. "I told you, I'm not your project." Cole finally turned, holding up the half-assembled frame. "You're not, but this might help you walk again. Unless you're into dragging yourself around dramatically." Her eyes narrowed. "Funny, I try." She sighed, gaze flicking toward the frame. "It won't work." "It might. You don't get it." Her voice cracked slightly. "This isn't a sprain. My neural pathways were scrambled by a frequency burst. Biotech interference. It wasn't just damage, it was designed. Meant to disable me permanently." Cole stared at her. "Someone did this to you on purpose?" Rayla didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. "My squad was ordered to abort the mission. They refused. We knew what was buried here under Virion. A failsafe system. A dormant weapon. What kind of weapon? The kind that ends fleets. Cole set the frame down. And they left you? They needed a scapegoat. I was the only one with access codes. They couldn't kill me outright, so they broke me and buried me where no one would ever find me. Well, Cole muttered, they clearly didn't account for my poor decision-making skills. That earned the faintest smirk from her. Why do you care, Cole? He blinked, caught off guard. Because I'm not a monster? Could have fooled me with that wiring job. Hey, insulting the guy building your legs? Bad idea. She exhaled, eyes on the humming frame. You really think I can walk again? He nodded slowly. I don't know what they did to you, but I do know tech. And I've seen people come back from worse. Rayla was quiet for a long moment. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, if I stand again, I'm going back down there. Cole tilted his head. To shut it off? To finish what I started? He leaned forward, elbows on knees. Then I guess I better get this thing running. Rayla's eyes met his. Not cold, not angry, just steady. Maybe for the first time in a long time, she believed him. Rayla's fingers trembled as Cole tightened the last magnetic clasp on the exoframe. The harness hummed to life, soft blue lights pulsing along its spine. She sat upright on the cot, legs still and quiet beneath her, tension rippling through her arms as she gripped the frame's handles. Ready? Cole asked, crouched beside her. Rayla glanced down at her legs, then back at him. No, Cole gave a small grin. Too bad. She scowled but said nothing. The moment she shifted forward, the frame responded, slow, jittery movements firing along the artificial muscles. Her legs twitched, ankles adjusting, knees locking into a standing position. It was mechanical, not graceful, but it was movement. Rayla gasped as her feet touched the floor. Cole steadied her, one hand hovering near her waist. I've got you, he said. I don't need a spotter. Humor me. She gritted her teeth and took a breath. One step. The servo at her hip stuttered, then corrected. She shifted weight to her right leg, tried to move the left. It froze. Rayla hissed through clenched teeth. It's fighting me. No, Cole said calmly. You're fighting it. Let it help. I don't want help, she snapped. Too bad, he echoed. The second step failed. Her body buckled. Cole caught her before she hit the floor. Let go, she barked. He didn't. Rayla, this isn't about pride. I'm not weak. I never said you were. She shoved against his chest, breathing hard, eyes wild. The machine buzzed faintly, locked in recovery mode. Her fists clenched. I hate this, she whispered. I know, Cole said softly, but you don't get to stop. She turned away, jaw trembling. I was the strongest in my unit, she muttered. Fastest, sharpest. I commanded firepower that could crack moons. And now, Cole walked to the nearby panel, adjusted the frame's calibration settings, then returned and knelt in front of her. You're still that person, he said. You're just learning a new way to fight. She stared at him, eyes flickering with something close to disbelief. You're serious? Dead serious. Besides, he added, flashing a grin, the suit was built by a genius. It's practically cheating. She snorted. Just a little. Cole stood and offered his hand again. No pressure, he said. But if you don't get back up, I'm telling everyone the infamous Rayla vet cried in a bunkhouse over a busted servo. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. He shrugged. Try me. With a low growl, she gripped his hand and rose. The frame activated again, more fluid this time. She took one step, then another, still shaky. But this time she didn't fall. Cole's grin widened. There she is. Rayla glanced down at her moving feet, then back up at him. Maybe I'll let you live after all, she muttered. Cole winked. Now we're getting somewhere. The snowstorm had passed, but the cold still seeped through the cracks of the hab unit, creeping along the floor like a quiet threat. Cole stood at the terminal, eyes fixed on the signal readouts. The beacon was changing, subtle but real. The pulse had sped up. 3 long, 2 short, now followed by 1 sharp burst. Something was happening. Rayla sat across the room, her back straight, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk. The exo-frame rested against her legs, powered down for the moment, but close enough to reach. Cole turned toward her, his brow furrowed. "The failsafe you mentioned," he said. "It's waking up." "I told you it was only a matter of time," she replied. "And what exactly does it do again?" She hesitated, then spoke, each word measured. "It emits a planetary-level kill field. Wipes out anything in orbit. Ships, satellites, drones, you name it. Why would anyone build that? To protect something," she said flatly, "or to erase everything." Cole leaned against the terminal, arms crossed. "And you're the only one who can shut it down? My biosignature is still linked to the system. I designed the override protocol." "You designed it?" Rayla's jaw tightened. "I used to believe in what we were doing, before they turned me into a liability." Cole stared at her for a long moment. "So they used you, broke you, left you behind. And this thing, this weapon, is still counting down." She nodded. "And you want to finish what you started?" "Yes." He rubbed the back of his neck. "What happens if we fail?" Rayla met his eyes. "We don't get a second try." Silence fell between them. Then Cole pushed off the wall and grabbed his gear. "Well, that's not terrifying at all." She watched him pack with a curious expression. "You're serious about this?" "Of course I am," he said, slinging a rifle over his shoulder. "I mean, it's not like I had vacation plans." Rayla's mouth twitched. "You sure you want to risk your life for someone you barely know?" "I'm a terrible judge of character," he said, smirking. "But I know one thing. You're not done yet." "So I'm not done either." She stared at him for a beat, then reached for the exo-frame. The familiar hum filled the room as it attached and engaged. "You're going to regret this," she muttered. "I regret everything." "Why stop now?" He handed her a comm link and a modified pulse pistol. "Let's go shut down the apocalypse." Rayla looked at the weapon, then at him. "If we die out there, you'll owe me dinner in the afterlife," he replied. She gave him a look, sharp and dangerous. But behind it was something else, something softer. "Let's move, Mercer." "Before I change my mind." Cole grinned. "I thought you'd never ask." The command silo loomed in the distance like a rusted tomb, half swallowed by snow and time. Its towers were jagged, broken things, leaning toward the sky as if still begging for a rescue that never came. The silence surrounding it felt heavier than the storm. Cole guided the rover into a narrow ridge, powering down the engine. "There she is," he said, peering through the frost-covered windshield. "Home's sweet nightmare." Rayla stared at the structure without blinking. Her jaw clenched. She hadn't been here in years, but her body remembered it. The weight, the betrayal. Every inch of that place still haunted her. "You okay?" Cole asked. "No," she said. "Let's go." They moved fast. Rayla's frame hissed softly with each step, her balance steady now. Cole moved beside her, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. At the entrance, a biometric scanner flickered to life. "It still works?" Cole whispered. "Of course it does," Rayla muttered. "It's waiting for me." She placed her hand on the panel. The door groaned, then opened with a reluctant hiss. They stepped into the dark. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and metal. Long corridors stretched out in both directions, lit by dim red emergency lights. Broken drones hung from the ceiling, their eyes long since dead. Cole whistled low. "Creepy. 0 stars. Stay close," Rayla said. "There are defense protocols. Auto-triggered." "Great," he muttered. "Just like a haunted house. But, with murder bots." They reached the central chamber, a massive circular room with a glowing terminal at its center. The fail-safe core. Rayla approached it, her footsteps echoing. "This is it." Cole glanced around. "So what's the plan?" "I plug in. Override the signal. Trigger the shutdown." "That's it." She gave him a flat look. "It's never that easy." As if summoned by her words, a shriek of metal rang out. Panels along the walls opened. Security turrets emerged, whirring to life. "Contact confirmed," a cold synthetic voice announced. Protocol 47A engaged. Cole swore under his breath. Rayla dropped into a crouch behind the console. I told you. Yeah, Cole said, diving for cover. Next time, lie to me. Lasers flashed. Sparks flew. Cole returned fire, knocking out one of the turrets. Rayla's fingers flew across the interface. Almost there, she shouted. Great. I'll just keep dodging death lasers. 2 more turrets emerged. Cole rolled, firing blind. A bolt grazed his arm, tearing fabric. I hate your old job, by the way. I hated it too. Rayla yelled back. Then silence. The turrets froze mid-rotation. The lights flickered, then went dark. The terminal let out a low chime. Failsafe deactivated, it said. Cole peeked out. Did we win? Rayla slumped back, breathing hard. We shut it down. Cole walked over, offering a hand. You okay? She looked up at him, hair stuck to her face, eyes wide and tired. For the first time in years, she said, I think I might be. He smiled, pulling her to her feet. Then let's get the hell out of here. They didn't look back. The sky above Virion was changing. The storm clouds had parted, revealing a crisp, violet horizon dotted with the first stars of night. The wind had quieted, leaving the land eerily still. For the first time in what felt like forever, peace touched the edges of the frozen world. Cole stood near the rover, hands on his hips, watching Rayla approach from the command silo entrance. Her exoframe was still powered, but her steps were lighter now, more sure. Less machine, more her. You took your time, he called out. I disabled a planetary death machine, she replied. Excuse me for not sprinting. Cole grinned. Well, I would have helped, but someone told me to stay in cover and stop whining that. You're alive, aren't you? Barely, he said. I think my shoulders melted. Rayla smirked and stopped in front of him. Let me see. He raised an eyebrow. What? Feeling helpful all of a sudden. She stepped closer, fingers brushing his arm as she checked the wound. Her touch was gentle, which was unexpected. Then again, so was everything about her lately. You're lucky, she murmured. I hear that a lot. No, I mean it. Her voice softened. You weren't supposed to be part of this. Cole looked down at her, their eyes locking under the pale starlight. Neither were you. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the rover's idle engine. Rayla turned slightly, gazing toward the dark shape of the silo. It's over now. The failsafe won't hurt anyone again. Cole stepped beside her. So what happens to you? She exhaled slowly. For a long time, I thought this planet would be my grave. Then I thought maybe vengeance would be enough. But now, she turned back to him, expression unreadable. Now, I think I want to live. Cole chuckled softly. About time. Don't get used to me being sentimental. Wouldn't dream of it. Rayla reached up, slipping off the exoframe support brace. She stood without it, shaky yes, but standing. Cole blinked. You're doing it. I told you I would, she said, her voice steady. He took a slow step forward, smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You're kind of amazing, you know that? Her brow lifted. Are you flirting with me, Mercer? I might be. Terrible timing. I'm consistent. She laughed, and for the first time, it was real, warm, and without defense. Then, without warning, she stepped into him, grabbed the front of his jacket, and pulled him into a kiss. It wasn't delicate. It was fierce, full of everything they'd both been holding back. Fear, relief, hope. When they broke apart, breathless, Rayla whispered, You still think this was a bad decision? Cole blinked, dazed. Best one I've ever made. She nodded, satisfied, then turned toward the rover. So, where do we go now? He looked out at the open snowfields stretching into forever, then back at her with a smirk. Wherever the hell we want. They climbed in. The engines rumbled to life. This time, they were choosing their future. Together. Here is the story ends. If you enjoyed and want to watch more thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dive into epic battles, explore distant galaxies, and join brave heroes as they fight for survival against impossible odds. Let us know in comments if you want next chapters to publish soon. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the journey. Together, we'll keep the last light burning. Subscribe now and let the adventure continue.